Ethan stood in the center of a giant alien hall. He did not move. He did not speak. He only breathed, slowly trying to control the fear inside his chest. The floor under his feet was smooth and dark, like black glass, but it was not normal stone. It felt alive, like something deep inside it was watching him. The walls were even stranger. They moved, very slowly, like a creature breathing in the dark. Long shapes stretched across the walls, like veins, and faint blue light pulsed through them. Again and again, Ethan had seen many planets before. He had worked as a mechanic on a human trade ship for years. He had seen strange things, but this place was different. This place felt wrong, very wrong. Tall, alien guards stood around him in a wide circle. None of them moved. None of them blinked. Their long bodies were covered in dark armor that looked grown, not built. Their eyes glowed softly like cold stars. Every single one of them was watching him, waiting. Ethan knew one thing clearly. If anything went wrong, he would not survive, even 1 second. He tried to remember how he got here, but everything felt like a blur. One moment, he was fixing a broken engine on his ship. The next moment, he was surrounded by alien soldiers and brought here. Without explanation, no one spoke to him. No one touched him. They only guided him like he was already a prisoner. And now he was standing in front of the most powerful being in the galaxy. Even before she appeared, Ethan felt her. A heavy pressure filled the room. The guards slowly lowered their heads. The lights on the walls dimmed, and then she arrived. The alien queen. She did not walk like normal beings. She moved slowly and smoothly, like she was floating just above the ground. Her form was tall and elegant, but also terrifying. Her skin shimmered like dark crystal. Her eyes were bright and sharp, filled with cold intelligence. When she looked at Ethan, it felt like she could see everything inside him. Every memory, every thought, every fear. Ethan felt his body freeze. He could not even look away. The queen stopped in front of him. Silence filled the entire hall. Then she spoke, not with sound, but directly into his mind. Human, the single word, echoed inside his head like thunder. Ethan almost fell to his knees. He had never experienced anything like this before. Her voice was calm, but it carried power, absolute power. Why does my daughter speak of you every day? Ethan stopped breathing. His heart began to race. He did not understand the question, or maybe he did, and that made it worse. He slowly lifted his head, trying to stay calm, trying not to panic. I do not understand, he said softly, but even as he spoke, he knew that was a mistake. The temperature in the room dropped. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. The queen's eyes became sharper. Do not lie to me, human. Her voice became heavier, more dangerous. You were found with her. You were seen protecting her. You were the last being with her before she returned. Ethan felt his throat go dry. Memories began to come back clear and sharp. The crash, the fire, the broken ship, and then her. A small figure hiding behind metal debris, weak, injured, but watching him with wide, glowing eyes. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered everything now. Weeks ago, his ship had entered an unknown sector. A sudden energy wave hit them without warning. Systems failed. The ship lost control. Ethan had barely escaped before it crashed into a dark, empty planet. Everything burned. Everything broke. He was alone, or at least he thought he was alone, until he heard a soft sound, a small movement behind broken metal. He followed it carefully, holding a simple tool as a weapon ready for danger. But what he found was not a monster. It was a child, a small alien girl. Her body was different from the queen, but her eyes were the same, bright and deep. She was hurt. Her arm was damaged and she could barely stand. But she did not attack. She did not run. She only looked at him, and something strange happened. She trusted him. Ethan did not know why. He did not know who she was, but he could not leave her there. So he helped her. He gave her water. He fixed a small device on her wrist that seemed important. He stayed with her through the cold nights. He protected her from the strange creatures that moved in the dark. Days passed, and slowly she began to speak to him. Not with clear words, but with simple thoughts, simple feelings. She was curious about him, about humans, about everything. And Ethan answered her. He told her about Earth, about people, about simple things like food and sky and rain. She listened like it was the most important thing in the universe. He never asked who she was. He never imagined she could be something more, something dangerous. Until the day everything changed. A massive ship appeared in the sky, dark and silent, landing near them with overwhelming power. Alien soldiers surrounded them instantly. The girl stepped forward, and for the first time, she looked different. Strong, royal, important. Ethan realized too late she was not just a child. She was someone far more powerful. And now standing in the throne room, facing the queen, he understood the truth. He had helped the daughter of the most dangerous ruler in the galaxy, and now he might pay the price. Ethan slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the queen again, this time with fear, but also with honesty. I helped her because she needed help, he said quietly. I did not know who she was. I only saw someone who was hurt. The room became completely silent. Even the walls seemed to stop moving. The queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she moved closer. Very close, so close that Ethan could feel the strange energy around her. You expect me to believe that a human helped my daughter without fear, without knowing her power, without asking for anything in return? Ethan swallowed. Yes, he said, simply because that is what humans do for a second. Just a very small second. Something changed in the queen's expression, something soft, something uncertain, but it disappeared quickly. Her eyes became cold again. Then answer me, this human. Her voice turned sharp. Why does she call your name in her sleep? Etiatram froze completely. He had no answer for that, and deep inside, he realized something terrifying. This was not just about what he did. This was about what he changed, and maybe that was far more dangerous. Ethan remained still in front of the queen while the cold silence in the throne room grew heavier around him. He could feel every eye on him. The guards were watching him like hungry beasts, waiting for one wrong move. The queen stood so close that he could see the faint silver lines moving beneath her dark skin, like living light. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she turned away from him and moved back toward her throne. It rose behind her like a mountain made of black crystal, sharp, tall, and beautiful in a frightening way. When she sat down, the whole room seemed to bow with her. Ethan finally took one slow breath, but the fear inside him did not go away. The queen lifted one elegant hand. Bring her, she said. The words echoed in his mind again. A side door opened at the far end of the hall. Two tall guards entered first. Behind them came the princess. Ethan looked up at once. For a second he forgot where he was, forgot the guards, forgot the danger. She looked different now. On that dead world, she had seemed small and lost, with dust on her face and fear in her eyes. Here, she looked like royalty. Her clothing was made of flowing dark silver fabric that moved like liquid light. A thin crown rested above her forehead. Her posture was calm and proud, but her eyes were the same, bright, curious, and strangely warm. When they found Ethan the moment she saw him, she smiled. It was small and quick, but in that terrible room it felt like lightning. A murmur spread among the guards. The queen noticed it too. Her face hardened. Daughter, the queen said slowly, come forward. The princess walked to the center of the hall. She stopped beside Ethan. He could feel the light energy around her body. It was not violent like the queen. It was softer, but strong in its own way. The queen looked at her daughter, not as a mother, but as a ruler. Tell me again, she said. Why do you speak of this human every day? The princess did not look afraid. Because he saved me, she answered. Her voice was clear and calm. Because when I was alone, he stayed. Because when I was hurt, he helped. Because when I was afraid, he did not use my fear against me. The throne room fell silent again. Ethan felt a strange pressure in his chest. He had not expected her to defend him. He had not expected her to speak so openly in front of the queen. The queen narrowed her eyes. You were not in danger. She said you were in a trial. You were sent there to be tested, to prove your strength, to prove your right to one day rule. The princess lowered her head, only slightly, I know. Then why? The queen asked. Why did you not finish the trial as ordered? Why did you remain with him? Why did you return? Change. That last word hit the room like a weapon. Changed. Ethan looked from the queen to the princess. He did not fully understand what was happening, but he could feel the tension between them. This was not only about him. This had started before he ever arrived. The princess was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to face her mother fully. Because the trial was wrong, she said. A deep sound spread through the room. Not speech, not movement. Shock. The guards looked at one another. Even Ethan knew that was a dangerous thing to say. The queen's eyes became colder than ice. Be careful, child. The princess did not back down. You wanted me to learn power, she said. You wanted me to learn how to survive alone, how to command fear, how to break whatever stands before me. Yes, the queen said, That is how rulers are made. The princess looked toward Ethan for a brief second, and then back at her mother. But he survived without any power over me. She said he protected me when he thought I was weak. He shared food when he had little. He fixed my device, though he knew nothing about our kind. He expected nothing. He asked for nothing. He simply helped the queen, leaned forward on her throne. Kindness does not build empires. The princess answered at once. Fear does not build loyalty. For the first time since Ethan had entered the hall, true emotion flashed across the queen's face. Anger sharp and dangerous. Half the guard stepped forward. Weapons rose. Ethan tensed, but the queen raised her hand, and they stopped. He realized then how absolute her control was. She did not need to shout. She did not need to threaten. Everyone in that room obeyed her without thought. The queen looked at Ethan now as if seeing him in a new way, not just as a human, not just as a stranger, but as a problem. You, she said. What did you say to her? Ethan blinked. Nothing special, he answered honestly. We just talked about Earth, about stars, about food, about stories. The queen's gaze sharpened. Stories, yes. Ethan said. She asked questions, and I answered. The princess spoke softly. He told me about rain. The queen turned her head toward her daughter as if confused by the word rain. The princess continued. Water that falls from the sky softly, not as a weapon, not as a storm of fire, just softly. And he told me about oceans and forests and cities full of voices. He told me that strength can also mean protecting the weak. Ethan wished she would stop. Every word seemed to make the queen's anger worse. But the princess kept going. He told me that some leaders are loved, not feared, and that people follow them because they trust them. One of the guards made a harsh sound as if insulted. The queen stood from her throne. The movement was sudden and terrible. The living walls around them brightened with cold blue light. The air itself seemed to shake. Enough, she said. The word struck Ethan so hard he almost dropped to one knee. The princess stayed standing, but her expression grew serious. The queen descended the steps, slowly now. There was no softness in her face at all, only royal force. She stopped in front of Ethan. So this is what happened, she said. A human mechanic stranded on a dead world filled my daughter's head with weakness and doubt. Ethan shook his head. No, I did not try to change her. I only treated her like a person. The queen's eyes flashed. She is not a person. She is the blood of the throne. She is future power. She is the next ruler of worlds. Ethan did not know why, but he answered anyway. Then maybe that is exactly why she needed to be treated like a person. The room turned deadly quiet. Even the princess stared at him now. Ethan knew at once that he had gone too far. The queen's face revealed nothing, which was worse than anger. Much worse. She walked around him slowly. You speak boldly for prey, she said. I am not prey, Ethan replied before fear could stop him. I am human. Another dangerous silence fell. But this time something else moved through the room as well. Interest. The queen stopped in front of him again. For a long time she studied his face. Then she looked at her daughter. Leave us, she ordered. The princess stiffened. Mother, leave us. The second time the command carried the force of law. The princess glanced at Ethan with open worry, but finally stepped back. The guards followed her out until only 6 remained, the largest ones. The throne room doors closed behind them with a deep sound. Ethan felt his pulse rise again now. The room was more private, which somehow felt more dangerous. The queen moved closer. Her voice became quieter. That was my daughter's survival trial, she said. She was sent there alone to master fear, pain, hunger, and control. She was meant to return, harder, stronger, and ready for rule. Instead, she returned speaking of rivers and kindness and human stories. She paused. Then her eyes locked onto his. Do you understand now? Human. Ethan said nothing. The queen continued. You did not simply save my daughter. You interfered with the making of an empress. She took one final step toward him. And for that you will now be tested. Ethan's mouth went dry. Tested how? The queen gave no answer. She only turned toward the shadows beyond the throne. From the darkness, a massive shape began to move. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Metal scraped the floor. Blue eyes opened in the dark, and Ethan realized with a deep, cold shock that whatever was coming for him had been waiting there the whole time. The heavy sound of metal scraping across the floor echoed through the throne room as the massive shape stepped out of the shadows. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Every instinct inside him screamed. Danger! The creature was huge, taller than any guard in the room. Its body was covered in dark armor that looked fused to its skin like it had grown with it. Long limbs ended in sharp clawed hands, and its eyes, cold, glowing blue eyes that locked onto Ethan without emotion. This was not just a soldier. This was something made for war. The queen did not look at the creature. She only watched Ethan. "This is one of my elite," she said, calmly. "A commander of my inner guard. It has ended wars before they even began." Ethan swallowed slowly. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing, just his body and his mind. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. The queen answered without hesitation. "Survive." The word hit him harder than anything else. The creature stepped forward. Each step was heavy, controlled, precise. It was not rushing. It was not angry. It was certain. Ethan quickly looked around. The throne room was wide, but open, no place to hide, no cover, just smooth, dark floor. And watching eyes, he took a slow step back, trying to think. Fighting this thing directly was impossible. He would die in seconds, so he needed something else, something smarter. The creature moved again, faster this time. Ethan barely reacted in time. He threw himself to the side as one massive claw slammed into the ground where he had been standing. The impact cracked the dark surface. A deep line spread across the floor. Ethan rolled quickly and pushed himself up. His heart was racing now, his breathing uneven. The creature turned its head slightly, studying him. Learning, Ethan realized something important. This thing was not just strong. It was intelligent. That made it even more dangerous. Another attack came. Fast and direct. Ethan jumped back again, but not far enough. The edge of the creature's arm hit his side. Pain exploded through his body. He crashed hard onto the floor, sliding across the smooth surface. For a moment, everything blurred. Sound faded, but he forced himself up. If he stayed down, he was dead. The guards watched in silence. No one moved. No one helped to them. This was not a fight. This was a test. The creature advanced again, slower now, almost patient, like it was enjoying the process. Ethan wiped blood from his mouth. His mind raced. He could not win with strength. He could not match speed. But maybe, just maybe, he could use something else. He looked at the creature again, really looked this time. Its movements were powerful, but heavy. Its armor thick, but not flexible. It relied on control and force, not speed or quick turns. Ethan took a slow breath and changed the way he moved. He stopped, backing away in panic. He began to circle, light steps, careful timing. The creature paused, watching, confused for the first time. Ethan moved again, this time, stepping closer, then quickly pulling back, testing, learning. The creature attacked. But Ethan was ready. He moved early, not late. He slipped to the side just before the strike came. Not fast, but smart. The claw missed him by inches. The creature turned sharply, but its size slowed it down just enough. Ethan saw it. A small delay, a small weakness. He moved again, closer this time, then away again and again. The creature became more aggressive, its attacks faster, stronger, but also less controlled. It was adapting, but so was Ethan. The queen watched everything. Her eyes did not blink. The princess stood near the entrance, her hands tight, her face filled with quiet fear. Ethan felt his legs begin to shake, his side burned with pain. His breathing became heavier. He knew he could not keep this up for long. He needed something more. Then he noticed the floor. The crack from the first attack, it had spread wider than before. Thin lines branching out across the smooth surface. An idea formed, dangerous, but maybe his only chance. He moved closer again. This time, not pulling back, the creature attacked instantly. A heavy downward strike. Ethan waited just a fraction longer than before. Then he moved, not away but forward, sliding past the creature's arm. The force of the strike hit the cracked floor hard. The surface broke further. A loud, sharp sound echoed as a large section collapsed slightly. The creature's balance shifted just enough. Ethan did not stop. He grabbed a piece of broken metal from the edge of the floor. Sharp and heavy, he turned and struck, not at the armor, but at the joint behind the creature's leg, the only place not fully protected. The metal hit hard. The creature let out a deep, distorted sound. Not pain, but surprise. It staggered one knee, lowering slightly. Ethan jumped back quickly, his heart pounding. He had done something real. The guards shifted for the first time, small movements, but clear. This was not expected. The creature rose again, its blue eyes brighter, now focused, angry. It charged faster than before. Ethan barely reacted. He turned and ran across the broken section of the floor. The creature followed without slowing. Another mistake. Another heavy step, another crack. The floor gave way, Further, one of the creature's legs sank slightly into the broken surface, just enough to slow it. Ethan turned again, his body screaming from pain and exhaustion. But his mind clear, he waited just 1 second. The creature pulled its leg free and lunged forward. Ethan stepped to the side and used all his strength to push against its movement, not to stop it, but to guide it toward the weakest part of the floor. The creature crashed forward, its full weight hitting the cracked surface. This time, it broke completely. A large section collapsed under it. The creature dropped down hard, one arm slamming into the lower level. Its balance gone, its position broken. Ethan stepped back, breathing hard. He did not attack again. He did not move closer. He simply stood there, watching, waiting. The creature tried to rise, but the angle was wrong. Its size now worked against it. Its strength useless in that position. The room fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The queen slowly stepped forward. Her gaze moved from the trapped creature to Ethan. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, very quietly, enough, the creature stopped moving at once, as if the word itself was a command it could not ignore. Guards moved in carefully, securing it and pulling it back from the broken floor. Ethan remained where he was, his body shaking now that the fight was over. Blood still running slowly from his side, but he was standing. He was alive. The queen stood in front of him again, closer than before. "You did not defeat it," she said. Ethan nodded slightly. "I know, I just survived." The queen tilted her head slightly, studying him in a new way. "You understood your weakness and used its strength against it?" Ethan said nothing. "You adapted," she continued. "You observed, you learned, you acted without fear, controlling your mind instead of your body." A long pause followed. Then she said something no one expected. "Interesting." The words spread through the room like a shockwave. The guards lowered their weapons slightly. The princess looked at Ethan with quiet relief, but the queen's eyes were still sharp, still dangerous. "This changes nothing," she said. "You are still the reason my daughter has changed. You are still a variable I do not control." Ethan met her gaze, despite the fear. "I did not try to change her." The queen stepped even closer. "That does not matter," she said softly, "because you did." Another silence. Heavy, deep. Then the queen turned slightly, looking toward the throne, and for the first time her voice carried something different. Not anger, not control, but thought. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "this is not weakness." The room froze. No one reacted. No one even breathed, because what she had just said was more dangerous than anything before. Then she looked back at Ethan, and her next words changed everything. "You will not leave." Ethan's heart stopped for a second. The queen continued, "You will remain here under my command, and you will show me what else your kind can do." The princess took a small step forward, hope in her eyes. But far beyond the throne room, hidden in the darkness of space, unknown ships had already begun to move, watching, waiting, because news of this moment was spreading. And if a single human could change the future of an empire, then the entire galaxy was about to enter something far more dangerous than war. Ethan did not sleep that cycle. After the fight in the throne room, he was taken through long, silent halls deep into the inner palace, where the air felt colder and the walls glowed with soft blue light. No chains were placed on him. No one struck him, but that only made everything feel stranger. 2 elite guards walked in front of him, and 2 behind him, never speaking, never looking at him, as if he was not a prisoner and not a guest, but something in between, something dangerous. They brought him to a chamber high inside one of the palace towers. It was larger than any room he had ever slept in, yet it felt less comforting than the broken supply cabin on his old ship. The walls were curved and dark, with faint silver lines moving slowly inside them like liquid stars. There was a narrow bed, a low table, and a wide window made of clear crystal that looked out over the alien capital. Ethan stood at that window for a long time. The city below stretched farther than he could see. Towers rose like black spears toward the sky, while streams of light moved between them in perfect silence. Ships drifted above the city in ordered lines. Everything looked powerful, controlled, eternal. But Ethan had begun to understand something important. Places that looked strongest often hid the deepest cracks. The princess had changed, the queen had noticed. And now the whole palace felt like it was holding its breath when the chamber door opened again. Ethan turned quickly. He expected guards. Instead, he saw the princess. She entered alone, wearing a dark silver cloak over her royal clothing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she smiled gently. "You are still alive," she said. "Ethan, let out a tired breath that almost became a laugh. Barely she stepped closer and looked at the wound on his side. It was wrapped now with smooth, alien material placed there by palace healers, but it still hurt when he moved. "You should be resting," she said. Ethan looked at her carefully. "I think resting is the one thing your palace does not want me to do." The princess lowered her eyes for a second. "That is true." She moved to the window and looked out over the city. From here she looked less like a royal figure and more like the lost girl he had met on the dead planet. Ethan noticed it at once. In public she carried the weight of a crown, but in private the burden showed. "Why did you come?" he asked quietly. "Because my mother will not tell me what she is planning," she answered. "And because I wanted to thank you." Ethan frowned. "For what? For not kneeling," she said. He blinked. What? The princess turned to him again. "Everyone kneels to her," she said. "Everyone fears her so deeply that they shape their thoughts before they even speak. But you answer her honestly, even when it puts your life in danger." Ethan gave a weak smile. "That may be the only thing keeping me alive for the first time since entering the room." She laughed softly. The sound was brief but real. Then it faded. "There is more happening than you know," she said. Ethan had already guessed that. "Tell me." She hesitated, as if choosing which truth was safest to speak. "When I returned from the trial," she said, "my mother expected me to stand before the court and declare myself ready to begin the next stage of rule. Instead, I questioned the trial. I questioned the lessons it was meant to teach, and I spoke of you." Ethan leaned slightly against the wall. "That could not have gone well." "It did not." The princess looked back toward the city. "There are factions in the empire," she said slowly. "Some support my mother fully. They believe strength must remain cruel, or the empire will weaken. Others already feared that her power had become too absolute. When I returned, changed, those fears became useful to many people." Ethan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room. "Useful? How? They can now whisper that the air is unstable," she said. "That the queen is losing control of her own bloodline. That a human has entered the palace and poisoned the future of the throne." Ethan stared at her. "That is insane to them." "It is politics," she answered. He understood then that his survival in the throne room had not solved anything. It had only made him more important and more dangerous. Before he could respond, a sharp tone echoed through the chamber. The princess stiffened at once. "What is that alarm?" she said. "Not for the city. For the inner court." She moved quickly toward the door. "Stay here." Ethan stepped forward, despite the pain in his side. "No." She looked at him in frustration. "This is not your fight." He held her gaze. "Everything in this palace seems to become my fight for 1 second." She looked ready to argue again. Then the alarm sounded a second time, louder now, with a deeper vibration that seemed to pass through the tower itself. The princess turned and left the chamber at once. Ethan followed. The guards outside the room moved to block him, but another pulse of alarm rolled through the hall, and distant voices rose from lower levels of the palace. Confusion was spreading fast. The princess looked back at the guards. "Let him come." They hesitated only a fraction of a second before obeying. They moved as a group through curving corridors and descending ramps toward the central levels of the palace. The deeper they went, the louder the unrest became. Not battle, not yet, but shouting orders, running feet, and the sharp hum of power fields activating when they reached a balcony above one of the inner courts. Ethan finally saw the source of it. Dozens of royal guards had formed defensive lines around the open floor below. At the center stood the queen, surrounded by her highest commanders and court officials. Across from them was another group, smaller but heavily armed. Their armor was marked with crimson lines. Unlike the dark silver of the loyal guard, Ethan had never seen them before. But he knew at once what they were: opposition. One figure stood at their front. Tall, broad-shouldered, older than the queen, but still powerful. His face was marked with pale scars, and one eye glowed with an artificial golden light. The princess beside Ethan went cold. "Lord Varrock," she whispered. "Who is that?" Ethan asked. "The war regent," she said. "He commanded 3 outer sectors before my mother took direct control from the old council. He bowed to her after that, but only because he could not defeat her." Ethan watched the scene below with growing dread. Varrock stepped forward and spread his hands as if he had come in peace, yet his troops were already positioned for violence. "My queen," he called through the court. "I came only to request clarity." His voice echoed through the chamber, smooth and sharp, like a knife, polished to shine. "The empire hears troubling things. The heir returns from her sacred trial speaking like a philosopher instead of a ruler. A human foreigner survives an elite test and is welcomed into the palace. And now the inner court closes its doors while whispers grow in every sector. The queen did not move. Speak clearly. Varrock, he smiled slightly gladly. He pointed upward toward Ethan. The chamber seemed to notice him all at once. Every eye turned, some with surprise, some with hate, some with open hunger for conflict. That human has altered the line of succession, Varrock said, whether by design or weakness matters little. He is now a threat to imperial stability. The princess took a step toward the balcony edge, but Ethan caught her arm gently. Not yet, he said. Below them, the queen spoke with frightening calm. You entered my court armed and uninvited to accuse my heir and demand action against one under my protection. Varrock bowed his head slightly. I came to protect the empire from uncertainty. What do you want? The queen asked. The answer came at once. Surrender the human for judgment by the war council, remove the princess from succession until her loyalty is verified, and restore military oversight to the outer sectors until this infection is cleansed. The final word poisoned the air infection Ethan felt. The princess tensed beside him. He looked down at the queen, expecting rage. But what he saw was worse, absolute stillness. Varrock had not merely challenged her. He had chosen this moment carefully. He had supporters. He had probably spent years waiting for one visible weakness to appear, and Ethan had become that weakness. The queen lifted her head. No, it was one word only, but it changed the room. Varrock smiled sadly, as if disappointed by a child. Then you choose division. The loyal guards lowered their spears. The Crimson troops activated hidden blades of light. The court was one breath away from civil war, and Ethan understood that if blood was spilled here, the empire would never return to what it had been. The princess pulled free and stepped to the balcony edge. Enough, she shouted, her voice cut across the chamber with royal force stronger than Ethan had heard from her. Before everyone below looked up, Varrock stared. The queen turned. The princess stood tall and clear beneath the palace lights. I am the heir, she said. And I am not broken because I learned compassion. If the empire fears one human, then the empire is weaker than I was taught. Murmurs spread. Varrock's face hardened. Childish words, he said. The galaxy is ruled by strength, the princess answered without hesitation. Then why are you afraid of someone unarmed that struck deeper than any blade? Even some of Varrock's own soldiers shifted at the insult hidden inside the truth. Ethan saw it immediately. This was the crack not on the floor like before, but in loyalty and certainty in the story. People believed Varrock raised a hand sharply. Archers on the upper walls moved, not loyalists, his people. They had hidden positions inside the court. Already Ethan saw the line of fire before anyone else. Princess, move. He shouted. She turned just as the first bolt of burning light shot across the chamber. The next moment changed everything. The queen moved faster than sight. A wall of dark energy exploded upward between the balcony and the court. Below, the first bolts shattered against it in a storm of blue sparks. Guards roared, troops charged, and the inner palace fell into chaos. Civil war had begun. The court became a storm of light and metal. Ethan threw himself down as energy bolts tore through the air above the balcony, leaving burning marks across the walls. The princess dropped beside him while the two guards assigned to her activated wide shields of pale light in front of them. Below the balcony, the inner court erupted into battle. Loyal guards crashed into Varrock's crimson soldiers with disciplined force, while hidden attackers on the upper levels opened fire at anyone wearing the queen's colors. The sound was overwhelming. Shouts, commands, impacts, the hiss of energy blades, and the deep pulse of defensive fields breaking under strain. Ethan lifted his head just enough to see the queen. She stood at the center of the battle like a living weapon. Every movement of her hands sent arcs of dark blue force across the chamber, throwing enemies back or cutting through their weapons. For the first time, Ethan understood why. Entire sectors feared her name. She was not simply a ruler. She was the empire made flesh. And still, it was not enough. Varrock had planned well. More of his forces were entering through side gates, while palace alarms screamed from every level. If the loyalists lost control of the inner court, then the rest of the capital might turn before dawn. The princess looked over the edge of the balcony, and her face changed from shock to cold focus. We have to reach the command chamber, she said. Ethan stared at her. Through that, if Varrock controls internal communications, he can declare my mother dead before this fight is even decided. Ethan understood instantly. In a civil war, truth did not matter as much as who spoke first and loudest. The princess rose into a crouch. The eastern passage connects to the command spire. Come with me, one of the guards objected at once. Highness, the route is exposed. The princess turned on him with sudden authority. If Farouk seals the spire, we lose the fleet network and the city grid. Do you want to die defending a hallway while the empire is stolen overhead? The guard lowered his head. No, Highness. Then move. They left the balcony under covering shields and ran through a side corridor as the battle raged behind them. The hall beyond was dim and curved, sharply downward, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. The palace no longer felt silent and eternal. It felt wounded. Distant impacts shook dust from the ceiling, and somewhere far below a heavy blast rolled through the structure. Ethan ran behind the princess, trying to ignore the pain in his side. He was no soldier, and no part of him wanted to be here. But he could see the larger shape now. Varric was not only challenging the queen, he was trying to seize the empire in one strike by turning uncertainty into panic. The group reached a junction and found the first dead bodies there. 2 palace technicians in silver uniforms and 1 loyal guard collapsed near a sealed door, burn marks cut across the wall behind them. The princess slowed only a moment. Varroc's advance team, she said quietly, they are ahead of us. One of the guards knelt by the control panel, but sparks jumped under his hand, locked from the other side. Ethan stepped forward at once. Moved. The guard looked ready to refuse until the princess nodded. Ethan crouched beside the damaged panel. For a second he was back on his ship, in a machine bay with failing systems and no time. Technology changed between worlds, but problems often did not. Power source routing, emergency lock, override. Hard seal logic. He pulled away one scorched section and saw the main control thread beneath it, burned, but not dead. I need something conductive, he said. One guard handed him a narrow metal pin from his armor. Ethan used it to bridge 2 cracked channels and then forced the panel into maintenance mode. The door shuddered once, twice, then slid open halfway with a harsh grinding sound. The guards pulled it wider and the group moved through. The princess looked at Ethan in real surprise. You can do that with palace systems. Ethan kept moving. I can do that with systems built by people who think no one will ever need to open them in a hurry. For the first time since the battle began, she almost smiled. The corridor beyond led into a vertical transit shaft surrounded by narrow walkways spiraling upward around a hollow center far above. Faint red light flashed from the command levels, too far to climb quickly. One of the guards moved toward the lift controls. Destroyed, the other guard said. After one glance, Varrock knew this route. The princess looked upward, calculating. We climbed. They began ascending the spiral stairs 2 at a time. Halfway up, they heard movement. Above, crimson soldiers. Ethan saw the princess signal silence, then point to a side maintenance rung fixed to the inner wall of the shaft. They shifted off the main stair and climbed through the hollow center instead, keeping close to the shadows while armed troops rushed down the outer spiral past them. It was slow, dangerous climbing, and Ethan nearly lost his grip twice because of the pain in his side. But they made it to the upper platform without being seen there. The command spire door stood open. Inside came raised voices and the bright pulse of control displays. The princess crouched beside the entrance and listened. Varrock's officers, 1 guard whispered, at least 6. The princess looked to Ethan. Can you shut the chamber down from outside? He risked a glance through the doorway inside the command room. A circular bank of floating displays surrounded a central core of light where fleet signals and city systems were being redirected. Crimson officers were already transmitting on multiple channels. One of them was speaking into a live Imperial feed by order of Acting Regent Farouk. All sectors are to secure military assets and await restoration commands. Ethan pulled back, not fully, but maybe enough to blind them. How long? Give me 30 seconds and luck. The princess nodded to her guards. We will give you both the next moments. Moved fast. The 2 guards rushed the doorway. First, shields up, drawing immediate fire. The princess followed with a blade of white energy appearing in her hand as if the weapon had formed from her own pulse. Ethan stayed low and slid to an outer maintenance node half hidden beneath the curved wall. The command spire system was deeper and more complex than the hallway door, but he did not need to master it. He only needed to break its rhythm. He opened the maintenance plate and found link distribution lines feeding the display ring, too many to cut blindly. He looked for pattern instead. Primary relay backup stabilizer channel there. He used the same metal pin and his own small blood smear for contact. because the emergency line required living conductivity. The circuit flashed. Hard pain shot through his fingers. Then the entire room went dark for one crucial second. In that second, the princess struck when the displays burst back alive. 2 Crimson officers were already down, and 1 guard had slammed another into the central console. The remaining attackers recovered quickly, but they had lost formation. Ethan entered then, grabbing a fallen shock baton from the floor. One enemy turned toward him, raising a sidearm. Ethan swung first hard at the wrist. The weapon flew away. The soldier rushed him. Ethan barely blocked with the baton and almost fell, but the narrow space helped him. No wide strikes, no flanking move, just panic and force. He rammed the baton into the man's chest and triggered the charge. The soldier collapsed, shaking to his left. The princess fought with a focus that was almost frightening. She was not the helpless girl from the trial planet now. She moved with trained precision, disarming one attacker and striking another at the neck joint of his armor before stepping through the central ring toward the transmission core. A final Crimson officer lunged at her from behind. Ethan shouted a warning and threw the baton. It struck the man's shoulder just enough to break his aim. One of the loyal guards finished the fight. A heartbeat later. Then it was over. Breathing smoke. Pain, ringing silence. The princess moved immediately to the main core and placed both hands on the control field. All palace channels. Prioritize air command. She said. The system responded in a stream of alien symbols. Identity confirmed. Fleet relay contested. City grid unstable. Ethanin, step beside her. Can you lock Farak out? Not alone, she said through clenched teeth. His people already hold relay anchors across the lower network. Then do not lock him out. Ethanin said. Trap him in. She turned what he pointed to, the signal map forming above the core. If he thinks he still has command access, he will keep using the same routes. Mark every relay he touches and feed false confirmations back into his channel. Make him believe outer sectors support him while you isolate his real links. One by one, the princess stared for half a second, then understood. A smile colder than battle touched her face. Deception through certainty. Yes, Ethan said, your empire seems to like certainty. She set the trap at once. The command core flashed brighter as hidden tags spread through the network. Below them, the palace still shook with battle. But now the fight had changed shape. Barak believed he was seizing control. In truth, every order he gave was drawing a map around him. The princess opened a citywide channel. This is Princess Serial, heir of the throne. The inner palace stands. Traitor forces have attacked the crown. All loyal commands hold position and await direct coordinates. Now transmitting. Her voice rolled out through the capital, calm, strong, undeniable. Ethan watched the signal line shift as ships above the city began changing course one after another. Then a new alarm flashed on the core. Not from inside the palace, from orbit. Unknown vessels entering upper space, one guard said. Ethan felt a cold wave pass through him. Varrock had outside support. The princess studied the incoming signatures and her face hardened. Not support, she said. Opportunists, border raiders, and rival houses. They were waiting for weakness. Ethan looked out through the high crystal wall of the spire. Distant lights were appearing above the city like sharp new stars. The empire was no longer facing only rebellion. It was facing invasion at the same time. And below all of it, one truth became clear. If the queen and her daughter did not stand together, now everything would fall before morning. The capital sky burned with movement. From the highest level of the command spire, Ethan could see war unfolding above the city in silence. For one long, unreal second before the first distant explosions blossomed in dark space, ships from the Imperial defense grid rose in sharp formations around the palace towers, while new hostile vessels pierced the upper atmosphere like blades. Some were clearly Varrock's allies. Others were scavengers, border lords, and waiting enemies who had sensed weakness and rushed in like predators smelling blood inside the spire. The command core flooded with warnings. Sector shields failing in the West Ring. Outer fleet requesting leadership confirmation. Defense satellites compromised. Civil panic rising across 7 districts. Ethan felt the scale of it all pressed down on him. This was not a riot anymore, not a palace coup. This was the kind of moment that ended empires. The princess stood at the heart of the command ring with royal steadiness, hardening around her like armor. For the first time, Ethan saw not only the girl he had protected, and not only the curious daughter who had asked him about rain. He saw a future ruler. She looked to one of the guards. Find my mother. The guard touched his comm node, then grimaced. The palace grid is fractured. Highness, too much interference. Ethan stepped to the signal board. Show me the palace interior map and all active power draws. The guard hesitated, but Sariel answered, first. Do it. The display shifted into layered palace geometry, glowing with dozens of moving markers and unstable fields. Ethan scanned it quickly. Varrock would avoid the obvious battle center now that his network trick was failing. He would move toward one of two things: escape or symbol. Either he would run to a secured dock, or he would try to kill the queen personally to restore momentum. He is going downward. Efine, said Cyril, turned. How do you know? Because if he escapes now, he looks weak, he answered. But if he kills her in the middle of chaos, he can still tell the Empire he saved it from collapse there. He pointed to a lower convergence hall beneath the throne chamber where several heavy power signatures were moving against the main loyal lines. Sariel's expression sharpened. The old ceremonial vaults. There are shielded approaches from the war archive level. Mother will cut through there to reach the central armory. Then, that is where Varrock is going. Ethan, said Sariel, looked at her remaining guards. Hold the spire and keep the fleet trap running. No one enters this chamber without my code, Highness. One guard protested. You cannot go alone. I am not alone, she said. Her eyes met Ethan's. Not this time. They descended through emergency shafts and secondary stairs while the palace shook around them. Once they passed through a gallery whose ceiling had collapsed, letting in a red view of the battle sky above. Once they had to wait in shadow while a group of crimson soldiers ran across the corridor ahead, chasing loyal staff everywhere. The Empire felt split open. Some guards saluted Cyril with fierce relief when they saw her. Others looked uncertain and stepped aside too quickly, telling Ethan all he needed to know about how close the Empire had come to breaking. They reached the ceremonial vault approach and found bodies scattered across the entry hall. Loyalists and traitors, both. The great doors beyond stood half-open. Blue light spilled through the gap. Cyril drew in one slow breath. Ethan looked at her woundless hand wrapped around her blade. Hilt you ready? No, she said honestly. Then she straightened. But I know what must be done. They entered together. The ceremonial vault was enormous and ancient, older than the throne room above it, and built with a different kind of power stone, not living crystal. Massive pillars ringed a circular floor carved with symbols of conquest and lineage. At the center stood the queen and Varrock around them. The last of their direct guards were fighting and dying in smaller clashes among the pillars. It felt less like a battlefield and more like judgment. Varrock was wounded across one arm, but still terrifyingly strong. The queen stood opposite him with energy curling around her hands like stormfire. Though blood darkened one side of her armor, neither had noticed Sariel and Ethan. Yet you built all this on fear, Varrock was saying. And now fear has come home to devour you. The queen answered with cold contempt. I built order from the bones of cowards who mistook cruelty for strength. Varrock laughed once. Then why is your own heir turning from you? Sariel stepped forward into the open circle. She is not. Both combatants turned for the first time. In all the chaos, the queen showed open surprise. Sariel, Varrock's smile, twisted perfect. The uncertain child arrives to choose her lesson. Sariel walked farther into the chamber with Ethan beside her. The lesson is already chosen, she said. I was sent to learn domination and returned understanding, responsibility. I was taught that fear creates obedience, but today fear created treason. Her words echoed from the old vault walls. Varrock spread his arms toward her as if offering salvation. Then stand with strength, stand with history. Your mother is old power breaking under its own weight. Join me and the Empire survives. Ethan felt the temptation in the air, not because Sariel wanted it, but because many across the Empire would think it practical, clean, simple. Choose the stronger hand and stabilize the realm. But Sariel did not look at Varrock. She looked at her mother, then at Ethan, and finally back at the war regent. You still do not understand humans, she said. Varrock sneered. I understand them well enough. Soft creatures clinging to ideals until stronger hands close around their throats. Ethan answered before he could stop himself. Then you have never met the right humans. Varrock lunged at him instantly with terrifying speed. Ethan barely moved in time, and the strike meant for his chest split a pillar behind him. Instead, Sariel attacked at once, white energy flashing from her blade as she drove Varrock back 2 steps. The queen joined the clash. The next heartbeat in the vault became a blur of force and steel. Ethan fell behind a broken section of stone as the three of them collided near the central seal. He could not follow every movement, but he could see the truth of it. Varrock was brutally strong and fought like a commander shaped by endless war. The queen was more powerful, but tired and wounded. Sariel was faster than both, yet still learning the full scale of her own strength separately. None of them held full advantage together. Mother and daughter almost did. Almost Varrock knew it too. He broke away suddenly and slammed a gauntleted hand into the central seal. On the floor, ancient symbols flared crimson. Warning tones boomed through the vault. The queen stopped cold. No Ethan looked around in confusion. What is he doing? Sariel's face drained of color. The old defense core, she said, this chamber once controlled the planetary spear grid before the orbital network existed. If he overloads at the palace, and half the city center will burn. Varrock backed toward the blazing seal blood on his teeth, and triumph in his one bright eye. If I cannot rule this empire, he said, then let the galaxy remember who broke it. The queen surged forward, but Varrock struck the seal again, and a wall of crimson force erupted around him. Sariel attacked the barrier and was thrown back. Ethan stared at the control lines racing across the floor from the seal into the surrounding pillars, and suddenly he saw it not as alien ritual but as a machine. Old, hidden, dangerous, but still a machine. He ran to the nearest pillar, ignoring the pain in his side. Ethan, what are you doing? Sariel shouted, ending his certainty. He said the pillars were stabilizers feeding the core in symmetrical pattern. Varrock believed the defense system would obey a direct overload from the central seal because that was how old war systems were designed. But old systems also depended on balance. Ethan scrambled up the fractured base of the pillar, found an access seam, and ripped free a stone plate hiding metallic channels beneath it. Alien design. Ancient logic enough overlap to matter. He reached in and tore loose the first relay crystal. The vault shuddered. Varrock looked up sharply. What are you doing? Humanathan grinned through fear. Improvising, he jumped down and ran limping for the second pillar. Energy bolts from Varrock's barrier scorched past him. One struck the floor near his legs and threw him sideways, but he forced himself up again. The queen understood for Sariel. The queen called left side array. Mother and daughter split instantly, each racing for opposite stabilizers, while Varrock pounded the seal trying to finish the overload before balance collapsed. Ethan reached the second pillar and smashed the damaged relay crystal into the open seam of another line, bridging incompatible circuits like he had done before, only bigger, far more reckless. The system screamed. Literally screamed to the vault in a rising mechanical howl. Sariel severed one stabilizer with her blade. The queen crushed another with a blast of dark force. The symmetry broke. The crimson barrier around Varrock flickered once, twice, then failed. The regent turned in fury just as the queen struck him from the front and Sariel from the side. Their power hit together, not identical, not opposed, but joined. Varrock was thrown backward across the seal and into the fractured control dais where the unstable core he had awakened consumed him in a burst of white-crimson light. For one terrible moment, everything went silent. Then the defense core began to collapse inward. Instead of exploding outward, Ethan dropped flat as energy folded back into the ancient channels with violent flashes racing pillar to pillar and then vanishing into darkness. Dust fell stone, cracked. But the city did not burn when the light cleared. Varrock was gone. Only scorched metal and broken symbols remained where he had stood. The queen remained upright by force of will alone. Sariel ran to her and caught one arm before she could fall. Mother. The queen looked at her daughter long and hard, then at Ethan, standing a few steps away, exhausted, burned, shaking. You stayed, she said to Sariel. Yes. The queen turned her gaze to Ethan. And you broke another of my systems. Ethan let out a tired breath. Seems to be becoming a habit for the first time. The queen almost smiled. Almost alarms shifted overhead, changing tone. The palace network was stabilizing. From somewhere far above came the thunder of Imperial guns, realigned now against the invading ships. The command trap had worked. Without Varrock's guidance, his allies were losing shape. The queen straightened slowly with Sariel's help open full channel. She ordered the surviving loyal guard at the edge of the chamber. The guard activated a portable relay. The queen's voice rolled across the palace. Then the city. Then the fleet. This is your queen, the traitor. Varrock is dead. The throne stands. All enemy vessels in our skies will surrender or be destroyed. All loyal sectors hold formation. The air stands with me, and the human, under my protection, stands with the crown. Ethan looked at Surreal in disbelief. The queen continued, "Let all who waited for weakness learn this truth. We are not weakened by change. We are made stronger by what survives it." Those words moved outward into battle and history at once. In the hours that followed, the palace was secured. Varrock's remaining forces collapsed or fled. The opportunist ships in orbit were cut down or captured by fleets now fully under Crown command. By first light, the capital still stood scarred, but unbroken. Later, when the fires had begun to die and the sky above the city returned to a deep, cold blue, Ethan stood once more at the great window of the palace tower. This time, he was not alone. Surreal joined him quietly below them. The capital was already rebuilding, as if empires never allowed themselves the luxury of rest. "You saved us," she said. Ethan shook his head. "All I did was refuse to die in useful places." She laughed softly, then looked out over the city. "Mother will change some things now. Not all at once. Not enough for everyone, but enough to begin." Ethan glanced at her. "And you?" "I will change more," she said. After a moment, the chamber door opened behind them. The queen entered without guards. She stood with them at the window, looking over her empire. "Human," she said. Ethan straightened. "I judged you as a threat because you changed what I understood, perhaps. That was my failure, not yours." He said nothing because there was nothing safe to say to that. The queen looked to the horizon where the last ruined ships were falling from orbit like dying stars. "My daughter spoke of rain. She said you will tell me of it." Ethan blinked, what the queen kept looking outward, and of oceans and forests, and why a people who should have remained small and fragile became capable of altering an empire without conquest. Now Surreal smiled openly. Ethan gave a tired, uncertain laugh. "That is a long story." "Good. The queen said you will stay long enough to tell it far beyond the palace, beyond the recovering city, and beyond the wounded orbit." The news was already racing through the galaxy. Not that the queen had survived, not that a rebellion had failed, but that a single human had stood beside the throne when an empire split apart and somehow helped forge it into something new. And in courts, war rooms, and distant fleets, one fear was growing larger every hour. If humanity could change the bloodline of the strongest alien empire without firing a single conquering shot, then what would happen when the rest of the species finally arrived?